All right, the Washington Post reporting that the president's son-in-law and top advisor, Jared Kushner, was at the White House meeting with several Latino leaders, negotiating over young immigrants known as Dreamers. He's quoted as saying this, that permanency would receive full consideration. Now, that's prompting some on the right to say any mention of amnesty could cost the president his shot at re-election. Let's bring in syndicated columnist and author Michelle Malkin for her reaction. Michelle, great to have you with us tonight. Your reaction to today.
Shannon, I think there's no question that the perception is that President Trump has, quote unquote, caved, and they're doing their best now to make clear that he is going to try as much as possible to keep this central campaign promise of building the wall. And for that, I have to say I do appreciate that, because there have been few Republicans, let alone Democrats, who've been committed to putting American security first above all else, which is really what should be the prerogative and the presidential imperative from day one. That said, like I said, he's not only between a rock and a hard place, he's between a swamp and a hard place. And when you are able to weaponize, as the Democrats have, a workforce of tens of thousands of people, I think it was just inevitable that we were going to have this outcome. So what's going to happen in the next 3 weeks? Well, you're hearing all of this talk now that in 3 weeks, yes, we may see a national emergency declaration, but that's just going to cause even more cynicism among the American people, because why isn't it a national emergency now? Why not declare it an emergency now? It's been a festering emergency for the last quarter century, or at least the last quarter century that I've been covering this issue, Shannon.
And a lot of people will say, listen, if that's the last tool that he has in his bag, they're immediately going to find a judge within the Ninth Circuit to go rule on it. And that, you know, like so many of his policies, asylum, DACA, everything else, it's going to be tied up in the courts. But in the meantime, something tonight that is guaranteed to drive him crazy. Congresswoman Karen Bass tweeting this out. At Speaker Pelosi should give the State of the Union, since she's obviously the one running the country. You know that's going to get under his skin.
Ouch. That's right. Well, the Beltway Swamp Queen and her acolytes are certainly beating their chests triumphant. But I think it's worth reminding the American public that this is a woman who's trying to pose as a champion of federal workers, who represents a party that wants to abolish ICE completely, who essentially called ICE agents quote unquote cowards, and has put every last illegal alien migrant trying to get across the border ahead of the interests of law-abiding Americans, and yes, law-abiding immigrants, not to mention all the people who around the world who are unfairly being treated because they're trying to get into this country the right way and respect the rule of law. That's what Nancy Pelosi represents. I call her Pelosi sin fronteras, Pelosi without borders, because that is the dug-in position of the Democrat Party. So among President Trump's most ardent supporters tonight, who are trying to spin this as some sort of victory or win, what they're hoping is that in the next 3 weeks, the American public's eyes will be really open to how extreme the open borders Democrat Party is.
Yeah, I mean, because you know, we had brand new Fox News polling out just a couple of days ago that showed the majority of Americans blame the president for this current situation. So the Democrats know that. They know that the media, in great part, is on their side, and they're winning the public perception battle. In the meantime, I want to ask you really quickly before we're out of time. The top Democrat in the Senate, Chuck Schumer, has said, we're totally against the wall, but we're willing to talk about other things like the need for drug inspection technology, humanitarian aid, strengthening security, blah, blah, all these other things, but no way on the wall. So where do we end up in 3 weeks? Are they just going to say the same thing? We never told you we're going to give you the wall. We said we talk about border security. You're not getting the wall.
Yeah, and it is like Charlie Brown and Lucy with the football, because, of course, the Democrats are paying lip service to, quote unquote, smarter border technology, but their stance over the last quarter century has been to pay lip service to it during election cycles and then to sabotage it. I mean, they really are on the side of Open Borders, Inc., the entire racket of maintaining all of the magnets that are drawing people here in the first place. And this is why it is incredibly important that this president listen to the grassroots that helped elect him and put him in office, and to reject any amnesty in any form, period. So the idea that there would be a path to citizenship for 700,000 DACA recipients and 300,000 so-called temporary protected status recipients who've been here, many of them since 1991, with 3-year extensions interminably. There is no such thing as a temporary amnesty, and that is proven by history and all of the reporting that I've done on the more than a dozen amnesties that have been passed by Congress since 1986.
Yeah, he's getting that message loud and clear from a lot of folks tonight. We'll see what impact it has. Michelle Malkin, thank you for joining us. Have a great weekend.
You bet. You too, Shannon. Thank you.
Senator Graham, you've talked to the president a couple of times. Yesterday, he was saying no short-term deal unless there is a down payment on the wall. Right. There is no down payment for the wall. So what is his thinking?
The best way to get this thing to conclusion is open up the government. The bottom line is the TPS recipients who have been here for decades as a result of natural disasters, wars, they're going to begin to lose their legal status this year. You have DACA folks that are in sort of legal limbo. The president is willing to give 1.1 million people a better life if he can get a secure border. To my Democratic friends, you have voted in the past for wall funding greater than the president's requested. This is the first time in 12 years I've seen a deal where you secure your border and give a better life to the DACA TPS population. If the Democrats do not work with us, the biggest losers, in my view, are going to be the TPS DACA recipients, because this president will secure our border through executive action.
Based on your conversations with him, though, is he leaning toward, if there is no progress in 3 weeks, using his executive authority or just shutting it down again?
My belief is this needs to come to an end, that every commander-in-chief has an obligation to defend the country. How can you look at that border and believe it's not porous? You had a 9-month pregnant woman climb over the wall. A couple of days ago, you had 100 people come over the wall using a ladder. So I think the president is hell-bent on securing our border. He would love to do it through the legislative process. He's willing to give a better life to the TPS DACA recipients, put humanitarian assistance on the table. Here's what I think. Come February the 15th, if the Democrats still say, go to hell on the wall, you get $1, that's it, they basically tell Trump, I'm not going to do with you what I did with Bush and Obama, then I hope he will go the emergency route. We don't need to shut the government down. We need to secure the border. And to me, the last best chance to do this win-win is between now and February the 15th.
And based on the conversations you've had with your Democratic colleagues, is this, the end of the shutdown, the 3-week extension, is that going to push a comprehensive immigration deal? Is there going to be this huge bargain now the day after Valentine's Day?
To my Democratic colleagues, I've been working with you for a decade. You voted in 2013 for $42 billion to secure our border, 700 miles of fencing. You've done this in the past. This president is willing to give a better life to the DACA TPS population. The TPS recipients are going to lose their legal status, and this president's willing to work with them if he can get something in return, securing our border. As to shutting the government down again, that makes no sense to me. What I want to do is shut down the crime coming across the border. The real danger of this country is a broken border. To my Democratic colleagues, this is the best chance I've seen since 2006 to get a deal that is a win-win for all of us. Take advantage of it. If you don't, by February the 15th, this president has one choice left: to do it by himself through executive action. That's the last option, but it may be the only option if Democrats won't work with us. To Nancy Pelosi, all you've done is say no. Every time he's put an idea on the table, every time he's moved, you just tell him no. All I can say is to my Democratic senators who took the floor yesterday, 8 of you promised to work with this president to do more on wall security, border funding, barrier funding. If you can push your colleagues to where you're at, we'll get a deal good for the country.
Last one. If the government quickly reopens today, will there be a State of the Union address in the House chamber with the Speaker, Nancy Pelosi, sitting behind President Trump on Tuesday night?
I hope so. The more we can get back to being normal, the more we can look like a country that has differences but still united in purpose, the better. It would be good for this country to have the president speak from the House chamber with the Speaker over his shoulder, showing that we have differences but we're also able to work together. To my Democratic colleagues, we've got 3 weeks to bring about a conclusion to a problem that's been going on for 13 years. To the president, thank you for giving us this opportunity. If you have to go it alone, it will be because you tried everything and nothing worked but going it alone. I'm somewhat optimistic that Democratic senators who spoke yesterday are going to make sure the TPS population does not go into the darkness, that these DACA recipients will have a better life, then go to school, then get in-state tuition legally, and all that, all you got to do is to give the president a few $1 billion more for a barrier you've previously voted for. That's all you got to do, is to give him the same thing you gave Obama and Bush, and we'll have a deal that, that will be good for the country. Please take advantage of this.
All right. Senator Lindsey Graham, you heard it here first before anywhere else. Dana, back to you.
Peter Doocy, thank you for that enterprising reporting, and thank you, Senator Graham, for being there with us live on the Daily Briefing.